So there are very many differences that I learned throughout my travels around the world in the 3 continents that I've been on. I've been in India, China, and Central and Eastern Europe. Some specific examples, we were developing a supplier in Poland that required translation. So we had to be very, very patient with our communications. And it was very important when we put anything in writing that we were very descript and very clear and very concise, because everything got translated. Any misunderstandings caused huge issues. During negotiations with the supplier, it was very important that our contracts were very explicit and very clear. Same thing in China. In China, the business would always agree, say, yes, we can do this, or no, we can. No is not part of the Chinese culture, and I can attest to that. So you have to ask questions, you got to be very clear about it, and you have to, in writing, everything needs to be in writing, and there needs to be follow-up. What works well in, regardless of territory, is, a common theme. Understanding the culture, having an open mind when you go into the countries, being patient, speaking slow, because in every country you're going to have translation. Even in India, it was difficult to understand English and communicate in English. So stepping back, choosing your words properly, and being very meticulous on how you communicate is critical. And it doesn't matter on how big the company is. All the companies have factory workers, typically middle managers and owners or presidents of the company. So HSW was a company I worked for, or with, that we were buying from, where it worked very well. There was a Czech company, Unix, that we worked with, same process. A Romanian, I've done business in Romania, same scenario. Just important to get in there with an open mind and step back and assess who's who. You have supplier development, which is one thing, and eventually there'll be a handoff. Once there's serial production at a supplier and they're approved, it goes to what we call sustaining operations, or a buyer, and that's supplier management. And supplier management is very, very critical. It's just basic project management. Again, it's understanding who's who in the business, using all the technology, and holding the supplier accountable, forcing commitments, and making sure the supplier follows through on commitments. So it is not a bubble, it is here to stay, and it's an important part of business continuity. In supply chain, there's really 4 key indicators from my perspective. One is on-time delivery. One is lead time reduction. It's not about increasing lead time, it's about reducing lead time. That's important because of obvious reasons. You reduce lead time, you reduce inventory in the chain. And then the other 2 are overall year-over-year cost improvements, total cost improvements, not just piece price, but also improving the supply chain and total cost. And quality. If you don't have quality, you don't have anything. So the ability for you to measure quality. And lead time, all those measurements are very difficult to measure, first of all. And lead time is always a challenge because you don't know, is it when the part arrives at your facility, or is it when you place the order? So it's very important to define. So lead time is a good example where we put a measurement system in place in one of the companies I worked for, and it wasn't valid. We couldn't validate it, and it was very different from what the manufacturer thought it was being measured. So it's critical to make sure that the supplier understands the measurement system, where the starting point and where the ending point is, and that you can measure it. Otherwise, no credibility, and no one believes whether you're doing a good job or you're not doing a good job. So total cost breakdown, a very, very important aspect of any supply chain activity, and specifically global supply activity, because it does give you a visibility into how the supplier prices their products. And it gives you an opportunity to negotiate with that supplier that has and is willing to be open book with their costs as far as labor, materials, and profit. Very difficult to get, but very important. And most importantly, in outsourcing projects, if you currently manufacture a product that you're going to buy, a make to a buy, it is essential that the supplier you work with is willing to talk about labor costs, materials, and profit. If they're not, you're going to be challenged to execute that project. So people, process, and product, those are fundamentally the key things. They're very high level, but at a low level, it's all about bringing talent in and retaining talent. So putting the right processes in place around talent. I did it when I was in Central and Eastern Europe. I quickly recognized that the resources that we hired that were from U.S. companies understood empowerment, they understood managed risk-taking, and they understood how to make commitments and do things with integrity, meaning when they make a commitment, they follow through on it. The resources that I hired that were locals and didn't have exposure to U.S. companies, we had to train them. And that was important. We have to train. You're not going to get the resources that are already trained. Whatever size company you are, you can train your folks internally. And that's important, to take the time to train your people on the processes and what's important to you as a company. No need to outsource it. You can do it internally, and you don't need to be a large corporation to do that. The other is human resource processes, making sure that you set and establish clear goals. And that kind of gets us to product, delivering to the company a quality supply chain that's world class. And the only way to do that is to make sure your supply base is measured in a valid manner. On-time delivery, lead time reduction, overall year-over-year cost savings, and quality. And making sure that your people, again, have good goals and objectives set, they're reviewed, and they're rewarded for success.